The questions we've asked have gone unanswered for months, and they fall into two principal categories. First, are their defendants, as a consequence of their conduct on January 6th, being deprived of access to potentially exculpatory evidence? We have seen that the FBI has a history of animating criminal conduct. That is precisely what happened in Michigan, and it may be what happened on January 6th as well.
Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, after he and two other Republican members of Congress were turned away from the D.C. Department of Corrections, where they tried to visit accused January 6 rioters. Many questions remain about many of the defendants who remain in jail, including their access to evidence and the conditions in which they're being held. Joining me now to break this down, conservative filmmaker, best-selling author, and podcast host, Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh, good to see you.
Buck, it's a real pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
I think it hasn't really sunk in yet with the American people, even those who generally try to pay attention to the machinations of the Democrats, the deep state, and the rest of it, that there are people who are being held and have been held for months in solitary confinement because of January 6th, who are not even accused of a violent crime. Dinesh, how is this possible?
The left began by describing January 6th in these kinds of inflated terms. It's sedition, it's an insurrection. So you would expect that these prosecutors would charge these January 6 defendants with sedition, but none of them are. If you look at the typical charging sheet, in a few cases, there are assault charges, but in many cases, it's only two charges. Number one, essentially being unauthorized in a public building, essentially trespassing. And the other is, quote, obstructing an official proceeding, which is to say, I guess, delaying for an hour or two the ongoing process that was going on in the Capitol. Now, the left is guilty of this 10 times over. They obstruct official proceedings all the time. They do it violently. They've been doing it essentially for a year nonstop in Portland. And so yet you have all these guys, and there are a handful of them, a couple of them that have been, their cases are now adjudicated. But most of the other guys, they haven't even had a trial. They haven't been found guilty of anything. They're presumed innocent, I take it, until they're found guilty. And yet they're being held under harsh conditions. I understand being treated very badly by the DC correctional system, and in some cases held in solitary confinement. So that means 23 hours a day in the lockup with very limited access to other people, and in some cases, very limited access to your own lawyers.
Dinesh, Nancy Pelosi joined George Stephanopoulos insisting recently the Select Committee should have no partisanship. Take a look at this.
I do believe that the work of this committee, in order to retain the confidence of the American people, must act in a way that has no partisanship, is all about patriotism. And I'm very proud of the members of the committee, and I'm certain that they will accomplish that goal. We have to, again, ignore the antics of those who do not want to find the truth.
I mean, Dinesh, she says she doesn't want this thing to be partisan. She blocked Jim Jordan and Jim Banks off of that panel, which is really not done generally in the Congress. But I can't tell which is more troubling, Nancy Pelosi being so delusional that she believes this stuff, or that she's such a practiced liar that she could say this with a straight face.
Well, there are a couple of huge questions about January 6th that this commission, I believe, will not even take up. One is, how much did Nancy Pelosi know, and what was her basis for rejecting security for January 6th when she was repeatedly warned that there might be trouble at the Capitol? The second question is, what was the role of the FBI in instigating the entry into the Capitol? Not just in a sense, planting undercover people to find out about it, but actually proposing it, driving the plan forward, making it happen. The FBI, as we know, is very involved in a similar plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer. In fact, that plot may not even have gone forward without the FBI. So what was the FBI's role? It's kind of interesting. We've got this agency that they participate in plots and then foil them at the last minute and go, wow, we're amazing. We foiled this plot that we ourselves instigated. I mean, this is really shenanigans at an amazing level. And then when we saw those Capitol Hill guys, the police officers, I mean, I was kind of impressed by the crying fest. Schiff was crying, and, Kinzinger was crying, and the Capitol police officer was crying. But some of their accusations really don't match up. One guy said, a crowd was yelling the N-word at me. Well, where's the surveillance video? Didn't you have a body cam on? Let's see the footage. There's almost nothing at the Capitol that isn't recorded. So if this really happened, we would expect to find it on tape, yet evidently it's not on tape, which tells me it didn't happen.